Hey Taceddin, how's it going? Nasılsınız? Hoş geldiniz.
Hello. Teşekkür ederim. Ayhan, iyiyim. Sen nasılsın?
İyiyim, iyiyim, ben iyiyim. Ben de iyiyim. Çok teşekkür ederim. How is life? Are you at home today or are you still at the university?
Uh, I'm at still work now.
You're
I'm at
still at work.
work.
Uh-huh.
Yes. It's last hour. It's going to finish at 5 p.m. 45, 15 minutes later. Last
Uh-huh.
hour at my work.
Uh-huh.
I
Fantastic.
finished my work. And before I go out, and I joined the class.
Yeah,
I
no, that's
joined the.
great. It's good to see you as always, Taceddin. How was your day? Did you do anything interesting today? How were your classes?
Actually, I have a lecture about public health for the first grade medical students.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and after the lecture,
Mm-hmm.
I talked with my research assistant,
Mm-hmm.
about the work also,
Yeah.
and I have a lecture tomorrow. I'm going to prepare other these these days. I'm joining lectures, and I'm preparing lectures. It's a busy day.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we have also research project. We are
Uh-huh.
working on this project related to public health in this area.
That's great. That's awesome. You guys are very
Yes,
busy.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
especially I like the idea that you guys are teaching the first year medical students information about, public health because I think a lot of times medical students they focus so much on their sciences and on their
yes.
other subjects that they don't focus on, the more humanities based classes, for example, like the social classes. So it's really good that
Yeah.
you're teaching that stuff.
Yes,
So
the first lecture is about what public health is, and what are the tools of public health, and what is the
hey guys, can you guys hear me by any chance? Or
Yes,
now
now
you can hear
we
us,
can
Lynn. Okay.
hear.
Fantastic. Sorry about that, guys. Tajuddin, I wasn't able to hear the last part of your sentence. You said something about the first lecture you guys teach is what is public health, right? I think. Can you guys, Lynn, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Well, Lynn, let's jump to you actually. I just wanted to make sure we could still hear each other. How's everything going, Lynn?
Everything is fine.
Nice, nice. Anything? Did you do anything interesting recently? Anything cool? Anything fun?
Just um, today I took a class with Eric. Do you know Eric?
I don't actually. I've only spoken a few times with him. I don't know him that
Uh,
well. Yeah. How was the
okay.
class? Uh-huh.
Actually, we discussed about an interesting topic, and the topic
Uh-huh.
is um, whether or not whether or not good-looking women have better life.
Then women who don't work, right? Yeah. What did you think about that idea?
Uh, I want to listen your idea.
My idea first.
Yes.
Uh, working women, I think depends. I think they have more financial independence. So I think it's
No,
important that women have. Yeah.
sorry.
I know. I said I think they have more financial independence, right? Because if they
Uh,
work.
sorry. Actually, my topic is good-looking.
Uh-huh. Wait 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand. Lynn, I'm not sure I understand. Oh, good-looking
Good-looking.
women. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm sorry. Good-looking women, if they have an easier life than
Yes.
women who are not good-looking. Well, honestly, Lynn, that's a very good question. I know that good-looking women definitely have an advantage in many careers, okay? Especially in the United States. It's not spoken about very much because it's considered a little bit of a taboo topic, right? When we say the word taboo in English, we mean something that is not socially appropriate, right? We don't really talk about taboo topics. For example, in many Muslim countries, you don't talk about, you know, homosexuality.
Sexual or
Yeah,
sexual issues.
or sexual issues. Yeah, or even now in in many Muslim countries, homosexuality, sexual issues about identity, gender identity, right? They remain taboo topics, right? In the United States, I think gender relations are still a big problem. Okay, because if you study what happens in the United States, for example, at the company level, right? If you look at a big, large corporation, there are still almost the overwhelming majority of CEOs in this country are males, right? The leaders of companies are all men, right? Vast majority, I would say, over 75% are men, right? So the women who are working in the business world, right? Even among my colleagues, some of the girls I saw that were, getting a lot of the good jobs and good opportunities, I think their looks definitely had a role in that success. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, depends on the industry also, Lynn. If you work in the hospitality business and the tourism business, if you work in the service industry, like if you are working for um, any kind of customer facing role, sales, human resources, right? Those jobs they specifically look for, I think, good-looking people. Just my personal opinion. Not only the men, but also the women. They look for very good-looking people in some of those industries. In other industries, it doesn't really matter. If you're looking to get an academic job, if you want to become a doctor, become an engineer, become a teacher, those kinds of things, they don't care. But in banking, in the world of finance, in the world of corporate business, as well as the service industry. By the service industry, I mean tourism, like airlines, um, hotels, hospitality. A lot of the secretarial jobs, unfortunately, I mean, if you are working in that kind of environment, good looks, I think, are extremely important. And they're not going to tell you. No one's going to say, "Oh, we didn't hire you because you're ugly." I mean, they would get sued. You know, they would be taken to court if something like that happened. But it's understood that good looks are important. I think, Lynn. Yeah. Unfortunately for people, that we are so superficial in some of these jobs.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah. It's sad, but it's a sad but true fact, unfortunately. Well, guys, thank you so much, and Lynn, thanks for the question. It's a great way to get the conversation started. We are actually going to be talking about a similar industry, not necessarily about the good-looking women, but we are going to talk about the aviation industry today, actually. So we're going to talk about, you know, flying and traveling. It's an article for traveling, so we're going to take a look at that. And in the first part of the class, guys, we're going to look at the past perfect, right? So when we use the past perfect, remember, we are comparing two things that happened in the past, right? Multiple events that happened in the past. One happened before the other, you know, and that's how we use the past perfect tense, right? So before we get started, guys, I wanted to just quickly ask you guys to get us thinking about past perfect stuff. You know, one of the things that happens a lot when we are talking about the past perfect is we are regretting things that we didn't, not really regretting, but we talk about how we weren't able to do something that maybe someone else wanted us to do, right? So one of the most common examples is, well, actually, before we get to that, right, let me just give you guys the construction. Remember, with the past perfect, the construction is the subject, right, and then the word had, and then the past participle, right? So, for example, I had worked. I had worked 3 days last week. Whatever. That's just a basic past participle phrase. But because this is an advanced class, right, we expect you guys to be able to make more detailed sentences, you know, more advanced sentences. And the way that it's used many times in English is we say, for example, something happened, but you didn't do whatever task was asked of you, or whatever situation happened, you did not do that, right? So, for example, my mother invited me to dinner, but I had already left the house, right? I had already left the house, so left is the past participle, right? My mother invited me to dinner. Invited, once again, past tense, right? Simple past. My mother invited me for dinner or to dinner, but I had already left the house, right? Many times we use these kinds of examples when we're talking about the past perfect. Something happened, but we weren't able to join, or we didn't take part in that activity, right? So in a similar idea, guys, I want you guys to give me an example using the past perfect of something that happened that you didn't participate in, right? So, Lynn, do you mind starting?
Um, when I arrived, no, I arrived at the party. He had left. He had left that party.
When I had arrived at the party,
Yes.
right, he had
Left.
already, or he had left. He had
Yes.
left, right? Or actually, Lynn, you can even make it a little bit more, I guess, advanced. Actually, what you said was great, but because this is an advanced class, I'm going to push you guys. I'm going to push you guys to make the best sentences, right? So, by the time I arrived at the party, right? By the time I arrived at the party, he had left, right? Or he had already left. So you can say when I arrived at the party, but by the time is a little bit better. By the time I arrived at the party, he had left. And that uses the past perfect very well in that example. What you said before was also great, but I'm going to push you guys to use a little bit more advanced words. Does that work, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
By the time I arrived at the party, there hadn't been anything to left.
There hadn't been anything left to eat, maybe, right?
Yes, to eat.
To eat,
About to
right?
eat.
So by the time I arrived at the party, there hadn't been anything. Mm,
To eat.
there hadn't been anything to eat. It's a little different, Tajuddin, when we use it. There hadn't been anything left when we were talking about presence or absence of something. I would say it's a little bit better, Tajuddin.
They had eaten everything.
Yes, yes. I think that's a little bit better. I think because when we are using the past perfect, it's easier to make a sentence when we are talking about an action that was done by somebody, right? When we say there hadn't been anything left, it's almost like we're making it semi-passive, you know? The sentence
Yes.
is partly passive, partly active. I don't even know how to classify that, honestly, right? But yeah, by the time I arrived at the party, they had eaten all the food, right? Or
Or
all,
can I say
uh-huh.
all or everything had been eaten.
Aferin, aferin. Exactly.
Thank you.
Everything had been eaten. Everything had been eaten. Fantastic. Fantastic. Everything, by the time I arrived at the party, all the food had been eaten. Everything had been eaten. Fantastic. Uh, Ken, how are you doing, man? Welcome.
Yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good, good. So I think you get the gist. What's an example from you, Ken? Same situation.
Okay. By the by the time arrive at the party,
Uh-huh.
The host had speeched.
The host had,
No,
what,
speech is a noun. Had
yeah, it's got to be the past participle, right?
had something speech. Host had.
Okay. What's the verb? What's the verb when we say somebody blank speech?
Yes.
What's the verb? Somebody gives a speech.
I got given the speech.
Yeah, fantastic, right? So by the time I arrived at the party, the host had given the speech, right? Or sometimes in English, depends on the party, right? But sometimes in large parties they have a toast, right? They have a toast. So like the host raises his wine glass and says, and everybody, thank you for coming today. This is a cheers or toast to my lovely daughter, my lovely wife. Those old rich guys, right? My lovely daughter, my lovely wife. Thank you for coming. So maybe it's a birthday party, something like that, right? So yeah, my host had already given the speech or had given the speech. Yeah, we use a lot of by the times and alreadys, guys, right? Or when I arrived at the party, or by the time I arrived at the party, or things like that. So we use a lot of those kind of different types of phrases, different types of time phrases to use when we are talking about the past perfect, right? And I liked how Tajuddin mentioned had not, right? So if you want to negate the past perfect, very simply, you just put a not after the had. Subject had not, past participle, right? Same idea. Everything else is the same in terms of construction options. Great. Any questions, guys, on that, on the construction? I think we're good. Remember, because this is an advanced class, we're not going to be spending much time on the grammar, right? We will be using the grammar in the article instead, right? So if everyone's okay, let us actually move into the article for today, right? And today, the article we are going to be talking about is Singapore Airlines, right, has decided to discontinue the world's longest flight. And this is something that is actually a little bit of a trend happening all over the world with many different airlines, right? The super long flights are being discontinued. And we don't know why. We don't know if it's a good thing for the tourism industry or a bad thing for the tourism industry. And this time we are also looking at an article from The Economist magazine, which is a British magazine. And I like some of their articles. They do a good job, especially if it's business related. Politics, I stay away because I think their articles are very one-sided when it comes to politics, but business is okay. So let's get started, guys. Let's take a look at this. And once again, guys, the idea is please, please, please ask me any questions as we go through this article, because I don't want to skip over anything that you guys may not fully understand. Any words or any paragraphs, make sure you guys let me know. So, say goodbye to the world's longest flight. Right? If you're the kind of business traveler who loves flights, especially super long ones, I have some bad news. Singapore Airlines Flight 21 and 22, the longest commercial services in the world, are scheduled for cancellation. Excuse me, guys, excuse me. The two all-business class flights, right? The two all-business class flights which operate between Singapore and Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey is just outside of New York City. So they operate between these two cities, take around 19 hours and cover 9,525 miles, about 15,000 kilometers. But late last month, Singapore Airlines announced that it would be canceling services, along with another between Singapore and Los Angeles that is almost as long. Right? Any questions, guys, on this first paragraph? Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great, guys. Great. The title for the world's longest flight, reports Ben Mutsabag of USA Today, will now shift to Qantas, right? Have you guys heard of this airline, Qantas? What airline?
Yeah. Australian airline.
It is, yeah. And Qantas is actually very well known for its very long flights because Australia is far from everywhere, right? And for their extremely their amazing safety record. They have never crashed. I think Qantas has never crashed a plane, right? And they fly to Australia, so there's always water. They're always flying over huge oceans, right? But even then, they have a very good safety record. So Qantas now has the world's longest flight, which operates an 8,576-mile service between Sydney and Dallas, Texas, right? Singapore Airlines is scrapping. What does the word scrapping mean, guys? If somebody scraps something.
Beat.
Beat. To beat works to a certain degree. You can, right? What's another example, guys? Tajuddin or Lynn, have you guys heard of the verb to scrap something? Like the word, like in scrap metal. Have you guys heard scrap metal? Sometimes people say this was created from scrap metal or scrap paper, right? Have you guys heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah. Scrap actually in this context means more that they are discarding something, right? That they're actually getting rid of something. So Singapore Airlines is getting rid of its record-holding services, right, as a part of a massive new deal with Airbus, right? So Airbus is obviously a really huge company, and under the terms of the new agreement, Singapore will get 5 new A380s, which are the world's largest airline, the huge ones. It'll get 5 new A380s and 20 new A350s. A350s are also really big planes that can fly enormous distances. It'll get 20 of those, right? And the manufacturer, Airbus, will buy back the A340-500s that the airline uses on its super long-haul routes. So this, guys, is an A340-500, right? It's a very long plane, right? And Singapore is giving all of these back to Airbus, and in return they're getting different planes, right? And these were the planes that were used for the super long flights, right? So, but those explanations, right? These explanations here will do little, right? Will do little to comfort the business travelers and long-haul flight enthusiasts who will now be missing out, right? CNN spoke to one of them. So we're going to look at the guy's quote in a little bit, but any questions, guys, about this article, or about this paragraph? Like, do we understand the reason behind why they're discarding all of these flights, or these very long flights?
Mm.
Lynn, Tajuddin, you guys.
What are the reason to cancel? Could you give some more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. Tajuddin. Great question. So, Singapore Airlines, right, is scrapping its record-holding services. So these super long flights, right? It's
Yes.
scrapping them. It's getting rid of them as a part of a massive new deal with Airbus. So Airbus makes all the planes, and they have a new deal with Airbus. They said that under this new agreement, right? Singapore made a new agreement. Singapore will get 5 new A380s. A380s, guys, are the huge plane. Let me just show you guys what the A380 looks like, because I think unless we see it, it's going to be difficult to imagine. A380 is a massive plane. It's the biggest plane in the world right now that that airlines use, right? As soon as my internet loads, come on. All right, that one is not working. Let me go here, guys. Okay, see these flights, or these planes. This is the Singapore Airlines one. Very big plane, right? Very large plane, the largest planes in the world right now, actually. So Singapore will get 5 of these, right? And they will also get 20 new A350s. A350s look similar to this plane, a little bit like that, right? Because they're getting,
According to their contract.
according to their contract with Airbus, yeah, their new contract, exactly. And because they have these 25 new jets, they are removing all of these planes that they have, right? And these planes were the planes that they used for those extremely long flights between, New York City and Singapore, direct, right? 19 hours. So now they don't have these planes anymore. So they're going to be removing the flights as well, right? That's the idea. But this still is not. A lot of people love long flights. Okay, I personally, I love to fly, and if there's no connection in the middle, right? Connections are just a waste of time, right? If I can fly from New York City or Istanbul to Chicago, or New York City or Chicago to Istanbul, Tajuddin, if it's a nonstop flight, I love nonstop flights, right? So this guy said, business traveler Charles Yap is a big fan of this route because it avoids a connection in Germany, right? He loved this direct flight because he doesn't have to stop anywhere. He gets on a plane, 19 hours later, whatever, he sleeps, he's in Singapore, right? And he said that this flight used to save him 6 hours, right? And these flights between New York and Singapore were all business class. The entire plane was business class, right? And there were so many movies and other, options inside the flight that it really didn't feel like 19 hours. It was okay, right? And he's very upset that they have removed this option for a lot of business people, right? In addition, guys, so actually before I move on, any questions about any of this stuff? Do we have any questions about anything that we just looked at? I think you guys are okay. Lynn, do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Lynn,
yes.
absolutely.
Stuck on a flight.
Yes, stuck on a flight, right? Fantastic. So when we say we are stuck somewhere, Lynn, right? The word stuck, S-T-U-C-K, let me write that down on this. So the word stuck actually means to be confined somewhere, to not be able to get out of somewhere, right? So if you're stuck at the mall, maybe you're stuck somewhere because your car broke down, right? Or you're stuck in the airport because your flight got delayed, right? Many different types of examples. It's the past tense of stick, right? So stuck is when you can't get anywhere. So when you're stuck on a flight, you have no other option. You have to sit in your seat. You have to, you have to do whatever you have to do.
You cannot move.
Yeah, you cannot move, right? If you're on a 19-hour flight, you must be in that seat or on that flight for 19 hours, right? You're stuck there. It doesn't matter how bored you get, right? You're stuck. So that's part of the idea. There's good and bad, right? There's good and bad. The guy says if you're stuck on a flight, you might as well enjoy it, right? 19 hours, if they give you good movies, good service, then it's okay. You know, you can still survive. Does that make sense, Lynn?
Yes, got it.
Uh-huh. Great, fantastic. It's a good, very good question. And then last but not least, guys, right, we read about this contract, right, between Singapore and Airbus. But we also read about, as CNN notes, high fuel prices are the underlying force that's driving these cancellations. It's not really the contracts, guys. According to CNN, it's high fuel prices, right? As prices have risen, right, this is present perfect, right? As prices have risen, twin-engine planes such as the A350, the Boeing 777, and the new 787 Dreamliner have come to dominate super long-haul routes, right? Displacing gas-guzzling four-engine planes, right? What does this phrase gas-guzzling mean, guys?
Mm,
It's a very American phrase, actually.
maybe gas consuming.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gas guzzling, the word guzzle means to consume, to eat, right? But it's used very rarely, very rarely. Really, it's only used when we talk about gas. So if you have a car that's a gas guzzling car, it means that it uses a lot of gasoline, right? So these planes that Singapore Airlines is now selling back, getting rid of, right? They are extremely high in gas guzzling ability, right? They consume a lot of gas to fly from Singapore to New York, right? And they're replacing these planes with smaller planes that are more efficient, right? More efficient. So for 19-hour flights to return, America's Federal Aviation Administration would probably have to do away with a long-standing rule that requires two-engine planes to stay within a certain distance of runways where they can land in case of trouble, right? It's a longer sentence, guys. What they're saying in this example, in this sentence, the first sentence said that gas is a big concern. They don't want to waste money on gas. This last part, this part that I highlighted, they're saying that for these super long flights to come back on the new planes, on the more gas efficient planes, the FAA, the United States Federal Aviation Administration, would have to do away with a long-standing rule. What does the phrase "do away" mean? Would have to do away.
To abandon.
Yeah, exactly. To abandon, to get rid of. Really the same idea. Kind of like scrap. Scrapping is getting rid of something. Do away is to get rid of something, right? So they would have to get rid of their rule that requires two-engine planes to stay within a certain distance of runways where they can land in the case of trouble, right? So these smaller two-engine planes, there's a rule that they have to be within a certain distance, maybe 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers of any runways, right? So that in case there's any trouble, they're always flying near an airport, right? These small planes have that rule. The big planes don't have that rule. But now that we are getting rid of the big planes, these planes are gone. Singapore no longer has these planes. The FAA would have to modify that rule, and they would have to say, okay, even for the smaller planes, we will allow um, them to fly in areas that maybe don't have airports, right? Because if you tell a pilot he has to always fly close to airports, it changes their itinerary, right? They have to modify their route, and they might not be able to save as much time, right? So that is another big reason. And the last thing they're saying here is the two-engine planes can fly on one engine without too much trouble. So it's worth taking another look at this rule. Right. This rule that the FAA made that you have to be you have to be close to a runway during all times of the flight, especially not over the oceans, but in like during the other times. This is an old rule, a very old rule. Now the planes are so modern that they can fly on one engine, no problems. So even if there's an emergency, they shouldn't be required to be near an airport at all times. Right. So this is just another angle looking at how this will affect air travel. Any questions, guys, about this paragraph? It's a little bit longer, and I know it's confusing.
According to the article, two-engine planes are safer than four-engine planes, and it is more profitable. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's more profitable. And why is it more profitable?
Because it consumes less gas or fuel oil.
Yeah, less fuel, less gas. We use those terms the same way in English, and at least in American English, right? We don't really say. I think maybe in other languages they say petroleum. I mean, not other languages. In English, so what am I saying? In English, they say petroleum also, but we in terms of the colloquial sense, we say gas, right? Man, my car takes up so much gas, man. My car just guzzles gas, or I have a very gas guzzling car, right? So yeah, you're exactly right, Tajuddin, right? These two-engine planes, they're more efficient, right? But if we want the two-engine planes on the super long flights, then we need to re-modify that rule. We need to change that rule that the FAA has right now. Because the FAA says if it's a two-engine plane, they have to fly within a certain distance of airports. They must be close to airports the entire time they're in the United States, maybe. So, and that makes it very difficult, right? Instead of going straight, you might have to go zigzag a little bit to get to your destination. Wastes time, wastes distance, So that's the idea, guys. Lynn, unfortunately, I think had to leave. Did you guys have any other questions about the article? Any words you didn't understand?
Two engines airplane is safer, but why two engines airplane have to fly close to the airport?
The idea is that this rule that the FAA made was from maybe 30 years ago. And in those days, they didn't care about efficiency, right? The idea was four engines means safer, because if two engines are destroyed, you still have two more, right? Or if one engine gets destroyed, you still have three more. But with two engines, you only have two strikes, right? One engine's gone, you're down to one. Two engines are gone, you're screwed, right? You have no options if you have both engines are gone. But it's just such an old rule. It's not really realistic for the modern world, because engines pilots learn how to fly on one engine very, very quickly. I mean, that's one of the things they have to know how to do to become a pilot, right? You need to know how to fly on one engine, and the modern planes can fly perfectly just on one engine. That's how they're designed, right? And even if you have no engines, pilots are taught to fly in those circumstances, in those scenarios. But the FAA, the rule is so old that it still considers the four engines to be better than the two. So they need to modify that rule so that it's more realistic, right? Right now it's not a realistic rule. Yeah. What did you guys think? I mean, when it comes to these long trips, right? Do you guys prefer these super long flights like I do, or do you guys prefer to stop at an airport for a connection? We say connection in English, I'm flying from here to Tokyo. I stop in Seattle, or I stop in Alaska, halfway, or Hawaii, right? Or do you guys prefer to take the direct flights, the long flights? Ken, what about you?
90 hours is too long. I want to rest somewhere else for a while.
Oh, you don't want to be stuck on a plane resting?
Yeah, because inside the plane I cannot walk, and maybe I have a backache problem,
Hmm.
so it could be it could be hard. I need
Yeah,
to walk.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Sometimes if I have had back pain, like lower back pain,
Mm.
when I was on a 12-hour flight, and that was rough, rough, rough. I mean, 7 more hours, and I would have been, I think, dying to leave by the end of that flight, right? Um, Tajuddin, what about you? Do you prefer long flights or the short ones?
Actually, long flight must be boring, and it's not healthy. And I think it must be difficult for pilots to uh, for a long time. He must be alert, and I'm not sure, but um, long flight can cause some uh, accidents because of long time flying long time uh, can cause some safety problems
Hmm.
related to pilots. They get tired. Maybe they can lose their attention.
Hmm.
But uh, there are some disadvantages of short flights. I think
Hmm.
it's not. It's more expensive than long flights in terms of passengers, and it takes more time, and maybe sometimes it will be tiring.
Hmm. Yeah, because
Yes.
for me, Tajuddin, even though like Ken, we were talking about being stuck on a plane, right? Even if I'm stuck on a plane, I'm still moving, right? If I'm stuck in an airport, I just feel like I'm really wasting my time, right? Because I'm just waiting for another flight. I have to check in. I got to do all that waiting. I got to get on the flight. They're going to take forever to take off. They're going to take forever to land. Delays at airports are such a nightmare for me, right? I have been to so many airports and so many cities for my job, for my regular life, that I just hate delays now. I don't trust American Airlines either. You know,
Maybe
I
in the future, airports may be more comfortable. We can
uh,
relax, we can rest. Maybe funny, uh, but today airports are not uh, comfortable.
they're not.
It must, yes, it must. It is boring. Waiting in an airport is boring and tiring.
Yeah, I
I think.
agree, and it's expensive. It's expensive, guys. Because
Yes, it's
if
also
I'm paying
expensive.
a lot of money, if I'm paying a lot of money to be on a flight, right? I don't want to spend $7 on water at an airport, right? I was at Ataturk Havalimanı, when I came to Turkey, um,
Mhm.
Tajuddin, and
Yes.
Ataturk Airport is the most expensive airport I have been to in my life. Like just the
Yes, yes,
sandwiches, 20 lira for a sandwich. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like this big, like nothing.
yes.
And they
Sorry.
airports know that they can charge tourists a lot of money because the people are stuck. I mean, what will they do?
Yes, yes. I know. It's too
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah. So I don't like airports because it's just a waste of time for me. Right? Get me to my destination. then I want to spend my money on my destination, not on the trip, you know. So it's interesting, guys. But I had another question though, guys, for you, and specifically, I think I'm going to be looking at just the understanding of, do you think there is a level of prestige to having the world's longest flight? Singapore for many years, I remember when they first, like, I don't know, just me as an individual, I love flying. Like, I love planes. I love reading about planes and about flights. When they first came up with this long flight between New York City and Singapore, they advertised it like crazy. Singapore now has the world's longest flight. You know, we are the best, blah, blah, blah, right? Is there a level of prestige? Does this give airlines bragging rights when you have this?
Actually, the kind of commercial promotion is always hype. Not always, but almost hype usually.
Yeah,
So maybe it's kind of, yeah.
there's a lot of hype,
This is
right?
the best, or that is the best. Everybody's the best.
Yeah, we have the best. We have the best pilots who can fly from New York to Singapore in one without stopping,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's incredible. It gives you a certain level of I think of arrogance. You know, if it does give you some bragging rights, right? Tajuddin, what about you? Do you think there's a prestige involved when we are talking about flying the longest flight, or?
Yes, I think it is a prestige issue for airlines.
Mhm.
Uh, I think sometimes they use this uh, issue to advertise for advertisements.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe, but I don't. I think it's not important for me as a personally.
Yeah, as a consumer, it doesn't make a big difference for me, right? For
Mm.
me, for me, honestly, I'm looking for the best deal, right? I'm looking for the best deal. If they can fly me for cheap, if it's a good connection, or if it's a no connection flight, nonstop flight, and if it's convenient for me, then those are more important for me, right? Than, oh, longest flight in the world. Who cares? You know, for me, I don't really care. And one other question, guys, looking at the idea of, you know, looking at the airline industry, right? It is changing. It is changing because of a lot of economic problems and economic challenges, right? Um, do you think? How do you think the airline industry? How had the airline industry coped with this in the past, right? Maybe because we look at these. Even the article mentioned that, a few decades ago, it was considered four-engine planes were considered more safe than two-engine planes, right? Times are changing, though, right? How are airlines adapting to rising gas prices? I mean, have you guys seen maybe things in your country? We have in the United States, just to give you guys an idea, we have low cost airlines now. A lot of low cost airlines, right? They fly from, between cities, very short flights, but they act like buses, right? Very, very cheap and very, very short flights, and they jump between different cities, Washington to New York, New York to Washington, Washington to Boston, short distances, short flights, 1 hour flights, right? And uh, because people are more, because of economic situations, um, people are more worried about their money. The airlines are more worried about gas prices and things like that. Have you guys noticed, changes like this in your countries? Ken, I mean, do you want to start?
Yes, low-cost airlines began to be popular,
Mm-hmm.
and the problem of low-cost airlines, I heard if for example, if I miss the flight, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot use that ticket anymore. So that's it's cheap, but sometimes it's inconvenient or more costly
Mm-hmm.
if I miss the flight. So
Yeah, because honestly, then you can't do anything, right? You just wasted
yeah,
all your money.
yeah. And the space, the kind of seat is narrower. Some low-cost airline seat narrower
Mm-hmm.
than usual airlines, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not so comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. There's an airline in the U.S. called Spirit Airlines, right? Spirit Airlines. their rule is that you have to bring one. You can only bring one bag, like a backpack, right? If you bring a luggage, it's $40,
Same here.
right? $40 for luggage is a lot of money. I mean, if the ticket is $70 and the luggage is 40, that's more than half the ticket price for just one extra bag, right? So people, especially for students, see you later, Tajuddin. Especially for students, it's a very difficult thing to say, that they have to spend so much money on just a bag. So people like me, when I fly Spirit, I put everything in one backpack.
Mm.
It's possible I can do it, or maybe I save stuff. I don't take that many clothes. I take just the very necessary clothes, and maybe I buy something when I go to my destination, or I just pack better. You just have to pack better sometimes. But yeah, so they are popular in Japan as well, then, Ken?
Yes, both domestic and international airlines, low-cost airlines, began to be popular here.
Have you taken any of them recently, or
No,
past?
because I rarely travel, so
Uh-huh.
I've never got on the
One,
low-cost airline.
one of the most popular flights in the world, actually, the most flown flight in the
Mm-hmm.
world, I think, is between two cities in Japan.
Oh,
I
really?
I heard that I think this is very old, but I was reading in Guinness Book of World Records, one of the world record books, and I read that two cities between Japan have the most frequent flight in the world. Because Japan is a country of islands, so if you want to go from between these two cities, it's much easier to take a flight. I forget the two cities, but it's not the most frequent international flight. It's the most
Mm-hmm.
frequent flight in the world, right? I
Mm,
think the most frequent international flight from that time was the New York London flight.
I
Very,
see.
very popular, yeah.
Mm,
But yeah, I think Japanese people, and now in Asia too, we are seeing a huge amount of these low-cost airlines.
mm,
In India, for example, there's one called
mm,
Air Asia. I don't know if you heard of
mm,
it. It's a very popular airline.
mm.
Interesting. Well, Ken, just to review real quick, right? Past perfect,
Oh, yes. Mm,
subject, had, and past
mm,
participle, right? We use many instances when we're talking about two things that happened in the past. We're comparing one that happened before another, one that happened by the time we used it, one happened, things like that. And then we looked at these low-cost airlines and things like that. So Singapore is now number 2, and
mm,
Qantas is back to number 1. Qantas
mm,
flies the most long-haul flights of any airline.
Maybe because of the location.
Yeah, everything's far
Mm,
from Australia. I
mm.
mean, imagine a flight from Tokyo to Sydney. That's super long.
Yeah.
Flight from Los Angeles to Sydney, Los Angeles to Sydney, Beijing to Sydney, London to Sydney, Canada to Sydney. I mean, everywhere. I mean, uh,
Mm,
the only short flights they fly are between maybe New Zealand and Australia, and when
mm,
inside Australia.
mm, right.
So
Mm.
yeah. Well, that's great. Ken, I have another class starting in an hour, but do you have any other questions about any of this stuff?
Mm. No.
Did you like the article? Was it kind of boring?
No, no. I like it, and
Okay,
I enjoyed class. So.
good, good, good,
Mhm.
awesome. Well, I hope to see you soon then, Ken.
Mhm. Thank you very much, and see
Awesome,
you.
Ken. Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Hey guys, can you guys hear me by any chance? Or
Yes, now
now you can hear?
Preparing lectures. It's a busy day.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we have also research project. We are
Uh-huh.
working on this project related to public health in this area.
That's great. That's awesome. You guys are very busy. Yeah, especially I like the idea that you guys are teaching the first year medical students information about, public health, because I think a lot of times medical students they focus so much on their sciences and on their
Yes.
other subjects that they don't focus on, the more humanities based classes, for example, like the social classes. So it's really good that you're teaching that stuff.
Yes,
So
the first lecture is about what public health is and what are the tools of public health and what is the
hey Tajuddin, how's it going? Nasılsınız? Hoş geldiniz.
Hello, teşekkür ederim. Ben iyiyim. Sen nasılsın?
İyiyim, ben iyiyim. Ben de iyiyim. Çok teşekkür ederim. How is life? Are you at home today, or are you still at the university?
I am at still work now. I'm
You're still
at
at
work.
work. Uh-huh.
Yes. It's last hour. It's going to finish at 5 p.m. 50 minutes later. Last hour at my work.
Uh-huh.
I
Fantastic.
finished my work, and before I go out, and I joined the class.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Mm.
It's good to see you as always, Tajuddin. How was your day? Did you do anything interesting today? How were your classes?
Actually, I have a lecture about public health for the first grade medical students. 2 hours in the morning, and after the lecture, I talked with my research assistant about the work also.
Yeah.
And I have a lecture tomorrow. I'm going to prepare other these days. I'm joining lectures, and I'm going to